So our first question is, can exes be friends? Now, I think that largely depends upon the relationship when you was together, of what the longevity of that relationship was, how that relationship ended, if it was a decision that you both made, or whether it was something that one person cheated on the other. I found that when I was younger and sort of dating in my 20s, early, 20s, I stayed friends with a lot of the girls I dated because I think at that age you're going in and out of relationships sort of in a short space of time, and it's easier to stay with friends because you're moving in the same circles, clubs, music scene, whatever it is, like how you're meeting people. And so you were more used to of things lasting a couple of months and then you kind of just move on from it. It wasn't until I guess I started having longer relationships that either I upset the other person or the other person upset me, that became harder to actually maintain those relationships. Because if you share a significant amount of time with someone, it's probably going to take you a significant amount of time to get over that breakup as well. And by this, I mean that maybe you won't be friends straight away, but as I've got older, I've bumped into a few girls that I've dated previously that we hadn't spoke since we dated or we went out. Um, and you sort of let the water go under the bridge and you're able to sort of catch up and see how it's going and talk about what you've been up to, and you kind of both past it now. You've moved on from it, and there's no point looking back at it. I think lots of guys and girls will try to stay friends with people, to which I see there is an advantage of where you think, do you know what, this hasn't worked out now, but if we stay friends and I stay in contact, maybe that door will open again in a few years' times. It's a question of, if guys are friends with girls, do they want to sleep with them, or can guys have girls that are just friends? Now, again, it depends upon the relationship of two people. There are often times when you see people and they're friends, but you kind of know that one of them definitely wants to go out with the other one or wants to have a relationship with the other one, but the other one's got no interest. So they're just keeping them at arm's length and staying friends. In this situation, do you think that's fair? Because let's say it's a guy and he's acting as the best friends with this girl, but loves this girl to pieces secretly. But the girl knows this, and the girl's got no intention of this at all. And she's made that intention clear, and she's maybe keeping him there because she likes him as a friend, but she knows that he wants a lot more. Now, in that situation, what's fair to do? Is it fair for the guy to be told, listen, this is not going to go any further. I think eventually this might go wrong, so let's call it a day. Or does the girl just accept that he's always going to be in love with her and she's only ever going to love him as a friend and he's got to accept that? I often think sometimes that it just needs to be fair and equal is what I think. I've got girlfriends that I'm good friends with, and it's always good to have a girlfriend or a boyfriend, a platonic one, because you do get views from a woman about woman stuff or a guy from about guy stuff from that perspective. So I think that's always really good to have because women will see things in their way. They won't see it through a guy's eyes. And exactly the same with guys. They'll see things through their eyes and they won't necessarily be able to understand a woman's thinking of how they're approaching it. So I think if you can be friend with your exes, it just needs to be established in early on of where your boundaries are, where your rules are. I I do see sometimes that people take advantage of the person that wants to be friends because they know that they're going to do anything for them. And in those cases, that's when I think you're not being fair on them. You know they really like you and they'll do anything for you, but you're just keeping them there because of that, not because you necessarily want them as a friend. So I think it's about establishing where you are with it. How many of you are friends with people that secretly you're just hoping that one day you may get together? And is it a case of you think, right, I'd really want to be with them, but I don't want to ruin the relationship we have as friends as well? Maybe that's a circumstance where you you're hoping that you might get together, but are you happy just settling as friends? Or if someone said to you, you know, you're never going to get together, I've seen the future, you two don't ever get together, would you still stay as a friend? Or would you think, do you know what? I can't be friends with them because I like them too much. And I think that's the big thing as well with being friends with your exes. It depends how much you love them. Sometimes it's very difficult to be friends with someone that you've loved that much, just for your own sanity, because you kind of think, right, if we stay together and we stay friends, I'm gonna have to watch them be happy with someone else. I'm gonna have to watch them move on once, twice, whatever it may be. They might choose people that I don't think are as right for them as I was, but I've got to sit through that and support them. And that might be just torturous for you. So sometimes the best thing for yourself is just to cut the friendship, love them from a distance as a friend, but just keep contact to a minimum so that you're protecting yourself and you're not endangering your own heart of just waiting around, because while you're waiting, sometimes it's very difficult for you to move on as well. That's the other thing. It's very difficult for you to be able to move on if you're waiting for that person to come back in your life. And also, it's not fair on the new person that you're meeting because you're constantly worried about whether or not the other person is going to become available. And that makes it very, very difficult. There was a UK government poll that found that 51% of Brits are not friends with any of their partners. Yeah, that's not really helpful at all, is it, guys? You've taken your time to do a poll and all you found is 51. That's half. That's 50-50. Probably for the reason I said. And it did say, well, 8% remain friends with all of them. I think if you're remaining friends with every single partner you've had, you need to look at what's happening in the first place, because I think that probably sounds a little bit like either you're doing something very wrong in relationships, or you're maybe not going after the right people, and there's probably more to yourself that you need to discover that might be a better relationship for you. So with all of this, I think exes can be friends, but it depends upon whose terms it is and whose idea it is to be friends and what the reasons are. There are some times that I'll come to later that I've been friends with people before I've gone out with them. And that's kind of been a shame because it ruined the friendship that was there in the first place. And that's always difficult as well, like whether you date friends. You know, if you've been friends with someone and then you find an attraction starts to build, dating friends can be brilliant, but it also can ruin the friendship as well. So that can become difficult. The next question we come to is chemistry overrated in midlife dating? So again, a bit of factual data for you that hopefully helps us more than the last factual data that I was given. Decades of research by Dr. John Gottman suggests that long-term relationship success is more strongly linked to patterns such as mutual respect, positive interactions, and effective conflict management than to initial attraction alone. Now, in terms of chemistry, especially if you're doing dating sites, and like I've said a few times, I don't do the dating sites now, but when I did, I found that I could be really attracted to people on text, through pictures, and convince myself that I was going to really like this person. And yet, as soon as I met that person, as soon as I saw them, I just knew straight away. And to me, that's chemistry. It's two things just being able to be drawn together. To be able to be, you could say attracted to each other, but that doesn't always have to be physical. It can just be sometimes, I don't know, you just get a feeling. And to me, that's the chemistry. It's that unknown factor of where you think, hold on, I really like this person when I was talking to them by text and by sort of voice and, in a video call. And but yet, as soon as you meet them, there's an aura about people that just doesn't go with yours. And you can sense it in other people. I've met people as well that I can sense straight away I'm not for them. And you get a vibe off them that they're not disappointed. It's just that they haven't felt any chemistry. Why does one person catch your eye and all the other people don't? That's the sort of the chemistry that I'm talking about. And I think that's very prevalent when you do dating sites because you're just going to meet one person that you think you're attracted to. And then straight away, I just found that it just wasn't for me. And yes, I know the argument of like, give people time, blah, blah, blah. And when I did that, it never worked out anyway. So I did learn to trust my initial instincts because I think there are times when it works the other way that we'll get to later on in the podcast. But when you're going to meet someone on a date, it's very quick. You don't really get that opportunity because what you can't say to someone on a first date is, "Hi, it's lovely to meet you. I'm Elliot. Listen, I've got no immediate attraction to you, but how about this? Let's stay friends for the next couple of years, and maybe I'll fancy you, and maybe you'll fancy me, and we'll see where it goes." Straight away, the other person's going to go, "Love your honesty. Thanks a lot. Bye." You're not going to find many people that are going to want to do that. Rightfully so, because they're on a dating site and they're on a dating site to date. They're not on a friendship site. They don't want to be pen pals with people, which a lot of these dating sites turn into that you don't even meet them. But that's another story. So I think it's very important that initial chemistry, that initial, do you want to get to know them more? Is this is this person interesting enough to you and attractive enough in their person that you want to know more about them? Or are you thinking, what time is the next train home? And can we, the same question as I alluded to just now, can it work the other way? Can friendships become romance? Because studies have shown that roughly two-thirds of people reported that their relationships began as friendship. And very simply for this, I think that you need to look at where a lot of people meet. Now, a lot of people, can meet in bars, can meet in clubs, etc., etc. A lot of people meet through everyday life, work, sports clubs, whatever it may be. But in situations where they're not on a dating site, you don't go into work going, okay, right, who's single? Who can I date? You go in and you just make friends with people. And then those friendships develop. And then after a while, you sort of think, oh, they're really nice, but you find out they're married. Or you think, oh, they're really nice, but you find out they don't like you. And, gradually you're maintaining all these friendships with people. And there'll be one, two, how many it may be over the years that you're drawn to. And sometimes you're drawn because you're in the same profession, you've got common interests, whether you're both in a job you hate or you're both in a job that you love, or you're both having problems with the same person at work, or you both have common ground in, discussing what's going on at work. So immediately you've got material that you could discuss and there's not a shortage of conversation. So you're able to relax, you're able to be yourself more. And because you're more relaxed, you're more confident. And you talk about things that are going on in your life, and they talk about things that are going on in their life. And then gradually this can grow. And that's when, friendships can become romances. I remember I dated a girl that I was seeing for a few months, 7, 8 months, that I actually met on holiday. And, when I met her, I had zero attraction to her, absolutely none. I thought she was really nice. And then I was there with my son, she was there with her kids, and it was an all-inclusive place. We was round the pool and got to know each other. And as the couple of weeks went on, because it was early in the holiday that I met her, I actually found myself after near the end thinking, actually, I'm quite attracted to her. And I think it was on the last day of it, I was like, would you fancy meeting up when we get back? And we did, and we didn't know if we were meeting up to be friends or meeting up that something else had happened, and something else did happen, and then it grew from there, and we went into this relationship. She, after a while, realised it wasn't for her, and when she told me, I think that's the first time I've actually thought, it's a shame because I really liked you as a friend, and it wasn't that because things break up and you get used to it and you move on. But I actually did really like her. She had her kids were great. She had a nice family, um, and I got on well with them. And with her, and I thought she was really funny. And I would have, if she had said to me, "Listen, you're not for me. Do you want to stay friends?" I'd have gone, absolutely. I think that's the only time I would have done it, and I would have done it without thinking anything else could happen as well, because I actually liked spending time with her and chatting to her. And like I said, I thought she was first and foremost funny. That was the attraction. It wasn't how she looked or anything else. It was just I found her funny, and that was probably one of the only times when I've actually thought I'm going to miss you as a friend, and I would have stayed friends with you. So that's the only time that's happened. But other times, I think you can become friends with people through the relationship. So you meet when you're out, and then you first and foremost you date, and then through the relationship, obviously, then you become friends, and then you can sometimes miss that friendship. But it depends what comes first. If it's the romance, then followed by the friendship, or the friendship and the romance, and both have their own problems. You know, one, you can lose a good friend because of the romance, and then sometimes you can lose the romance because you just become good friends as well. So it's really difficult of, you know, how you meet people. It's a lot easier meeting people where you've got time to get to know them. And again, you know, I said this about dating sites. You don't get this chance on dating sites. They're not sort of social clubs dating sites. They're people are there to date. And that initial meeting, because I always say the first one is a meeting, it's never a date because you don't know them. The second time you meet up, that's the date. But the first time it's just a meeting to decide if there's an attraction between you both. And and if you've both got that attraction, then you go on a date. And if you don't, you go your separate ways and you don't contact each other again because it was just a meeting of a person that you were looking at to see whether it was going to be good for you or you were going to be good for them. So, in terms of is chemistry overrated in midlife? I don't think it is. I really don't. I think it's still essential. Or maybe that's just me. You tell me. Sometimes maybe people get to the stage where they're not looking for chemistry, but chemistry doesn't have to be physical. For me, it is physical. Chemistry for me is a physical attraction. Chemistry to someone else might be whether they make you laugh, but you've got to spend time with people for that as well. And if you're not looking for chemistry, are you just looking for anyone? Are you looking for that person that's yours, or do you just want someone to fill a gap that's there for you? And that's when I just think, get a dog or a cat. We spoke about this before. I think there are a lot of people out there that are lonely and they haven't found solitude, comfort in themselves yet. So they're desperately trying to fit people in these holes. It's like, you'll do, fill my time for me, make me happy. I want to be with someone. I don't want to go to bed alone at night. And, once my kids are gone, I don't want to be worried about every noise I hear. I want someone else, and you'll do because you're there. And then they love that person almost through necessity rather than attraction and commitment and God, you're my person. And that goes back to the other question of, when people say you're choosy, you should be choosy. We say this all the time. Of course you should be choosy. It's the rest of your life. Choose to spend it with someone that you want to spend it with. And don't be worried about spending it on your own. You know, It's scary. Yesterday, I spent the whole day on my own yesterday, and I just thought it's scary how much I could actually just do this, and that's a nice place to be because it means that, you know that you're going to be okay. But I think there's too many people out there that just want to put people in, their life and fill that time because, they don't want to be on their own because they can't be alone. And that's a big difference. You've got to find time for yourself. I was listening to Djokovic of all people the other day, and he was talking about this, and he was saying about how sometimes being bored for kids is really important because within that boredom they can just sit in their own heads and just go through stuff. Think about things, think about them, think about, what they're doing that week, what they're doing next week, what they're doing in a year, where they want to be in a year's time, where they want to be in 2 years' time, you know, about their friendships, about their relationships, about the people in their life. And I think it's really important that bit. So, is chemistry important? To me, it is. Let me know what you think. You know, I think people that think that chemistry is important are drawn to each other, and people that think chemistry is not important is drawn to each other. But then that's the question of maybe that's their chemistry. Their chemistry is there's no chemistry. Okay, next one. Here, this is a tough one to take. Should you tell a new partner everything about your past? Right. Not on the first date, not on the second date. I think you can drip feed stuff to people, and it depends upon what you want to share. Because I think, sometimes you've got stuff in your life that you've put to the back of your mind, you've put in a box and you put it away, and you're either ashamed that it happened or you're embarrassed that it happened, whatever it may be, and you don't want to open that box and share it with someone else because once it's out there and people know, or the person that you're with knows, I should say. At least, you hope it only goes that far, which is the other point as well. But you kind of can scare people off too quickly, I think, if you tell them too much too soon. And it's nice to find out things about people as you go along. I think that, you'll get two aspects of this. You'll get the conversation that, at dinner when you're out with friends, you've been with each other a few years, and you'll have the person turns around to the other person and go, I didn't know that about you. Why didn't you tell me that before? We're going to need to talk about this. I did not know that about you. Now, as long as it's something like, you got sent to jail for 15 years for armed robbery or whatever it may be, you know, it's if it's something that you've kept to yourself for reasons, that can be nice for your partner to find out because the other side of that is your partner going, I never knew that about you. Oh my God, that's great. And that could be turning of a page, a new chapter in your relationship. And it's nice to get to those things at certain stages. You don't wanna know everything about a person within the first 2 or 3 weeks, do you? You wanna know a lot about them, and you wanna know that you're safe and they're gonna look after you, but you also want stuff to find out about them because, it takes time for people to tell you that information. Now, the biggest elephant that's always in the room with these conversations is, "What's your number?" That's always a great one, and that usually comes up, you know, pretty soon in a relationship of 2 or 3 weeks. And, that I always hate that question because you just don't know what to say because you either think, "Right, what do I do now? Do I just do a conservative number, or do I do a number that I think is gonna impress them, or am I just honest about it?" Or, whatever it may be. And then you're also thinking it's a little bit like a sort of a game of highest card of thinking, well, I don't want to go 6 and then they go 89 or something like that because, you know, I don't want them to think that I'm inexperienced or whatever it may be. Now, obviously, your number let's say, will depend upon how long you've been in relationships. And my argument to this is if people have been single a long time, their number might be higher to you, but not to single people, because you kind of think, well, I've been single, 80% of my life, and within that, I've met people, and especially when you get older, you get to things quicker because you're both adults and you know where you are, you know your feelings, you can communicate things better, and you want to know about each other quickly. So it can speed the process up slightly to when you're younger a lot of the time. And I just think that it's almost like saying, well, what's your number in terms of, yes, you might have only been with two people, but if you've been there with them 10 years, your number of times that you've been with each other will be hundreds or thousands, whatever it may be. And that's sort of, so someone that's been with someone a long time, they'll go, don't be ridiculous. But to me, I just think, well, you're having physical intimacy with someone, whether it's the same person or different people. It depends how you look at it, and that's the strongest argument I could ever come up with, to be honest. So you have to let me know your thoughts on that. But I think you end up going in a number that's usually around sort of 12, let's say. And the night and the funny thing about that is that as you get to know the person over like the years, for both of your sides, you're sort of regaling stories to each other. When you're those nights where you had a few to drink, and they'll say to you, "Oh God, I remember this time," and you'll say, "God," something like that, and then suddenly, one of you's thinking, "Hold on, this is way more than 12. You you went past 12 ages ago." So I think 12 is like is a nice generalized number to say, yeah, it's more than 12. It may be more than 12, but what does it matter? As long as you've both arrived at the same place, at the same destination, you know, and you know that you're good people, and you trust the other person, numbers are always going to be different. So I think that's one of the biggest questions about, should you tell your partner everything? Because everything's a lot, and you've got a long time to share everything, and you'll be making new things that can be your everything anyway. And the best reply and the worst reply I ever heard to that question, I was a third wheel with a friend of mine, and this girl asked him that question, and he pondered for a while, and he sort of looked, and he bit his lip, and then he looked her straight in the eye and went, "Does that include holidays?" Which I just made me die. Her face, she's like, what do you mean, does it include holidays? And his reasoning was like, well, it's like a holiday. You meet a lot of people on holiday. I've been on, I go on holiday 4 or 5 times a year. And this was when we were sort of in our 20s as well, when, everyone was out and about. And it was just the best reply to that question that I don't recommend at all, because, the rest of that evening was extremely funny for me. I'm glad I was there, but didn't go too well for him, I got to say. So our last question that we're coming to on today's podcast: what's one relationship rule you've completely changed your mind about in your 40s, or maybe even your 30s, 50s, 60s, whatever it may be? I think for me, relating this to personal experience, I think one is trust your instincts. That would have been one that I've learned to do more. If you feel in your bones that something is wrong, there probably is. You get very good at it as well. If you know they're not happy about something, or you're not happy about something, and you're going to need to talk about it when you're both ready. But that's definitely one that I found. If I thought people were messing about on me, they normally was. If I got a suspect about it, or whatever it may be, or if I thought someone wasn't right for me, but I'm going to try and persevere with this because I'm told that I make decisions too quickly and I don't give people enough chance. I usually found that I was actually right myself in the first place, and I should have actually trusted my instincts and gone along with that. And I think you'll know your instincts as well. And now they're called, and I hate the word flags because, you know, I've said this many times. You don't get to 30, 40, 50, 60 without having red flags. We've all got 'em. You know, one person's red is another person's green. So I think it's just about knowing what's right for you, what people are good for you. You know, whether you like someone that loves to party or you like someone that's, likes to sit in, whatever it may be. Trust your instincts in terms of the feeling that you get. Your instincts can be wrong, and usually it works where you think someone's great and you find out they're not for you. Doesn't mean that person's not great. It's just, relative to you. So there are times when, your instincts can be wrong and let you down, but that's probably not your instincts. That's more probably hope. You're hoping this person's going to be great for you. And because the hope in you is so strong, you're then ignoring what your instincts might have told you in the first place. The second thing that I've learned is there's no point chasing people. I learned this. If someone wants you to be with you, they'll be with you. If they don't, I grew up on rom-coms and grand gestures and, running across town and doing this and, doing a big gesture that's going to get the girl back because that's what always happened in the films that you watched. And, that's what you should do. And you should fight for someone. If someone wants you to fight for them, they'll let you know. There's no point thinking that you've got to fight for them if they don't give you any signs that they want to fight. And also sometimes let them fight for you. If it's been their decision to walk away, let them walk away. Let them get to the point of where they miss you and they realize that they've made a mistake. Because if they don't realize that, they've not made the mistake. They've done what's right for them. And that's a really hard one to take. When it hurts you, people doing what's right for you, what's right for them and not right for you, that can really hurt. That can really hurt you. But they've got to do what's right for them. But I would say, these grand gestures, I never found they worked for me. And if they did work, it was really temporary. It worked for a little bit, but eventually you end up in the same situation a year down the line and then you think to yourself, do you know what? I should have just stopped this a year ago. There was no point to it. What was the point? The writing was on the wall then. And, and sometimes going back to how we started these podcasts, sometimes just let them go. You know, if they want to stay friends and you're good with that, stay friends with them because you never know what changes. And sometimes things can come around, especially early in life. If you're in your 20s, I always say to my son, like, date people, finish on good terms, stay friends with them if you can, because you might meet in your 30s or 40s and may not have been right for you now, but they could be right for you later on in life and vice versa. So it's always worth, if it works for you, being friends with people, if you can do that. And that means, like we said before, you're going to see them with other people and you've got to be with other people as long as it doesn't stop you from moving on. But I think it's, you know, it, with people, like I said, if they want you, they'll let you know. Chasing them, telling them your undying love, there's no point to it. And it's like the same thing, and I've said this before, that when someone breaks up with you and they want to explain everything and tell you why to make you feel, but you don't need that. For me, you don't need that. You don't need that. Their reasons are for them. Their reasons are because they're doing something they know is hurting someone. They want to make themselves feel better. I completely get that. But nothing they're going to say is going to change their decision. And sometimes what we do is you want to hear people out because you're sitting there thinking, is this going to work again? Are they going to come back to me? And then you get to the end of it and you think, well, what was that about? All you've done is told me what I knew already. You've basically told me you don't want to be with me, but now you've explained it all. And you're never getting the truth. You'll never get, you're very seldom getting, listen, you bore me. I've met someone else. I'm going out with them and they're great. Whatever they're doing is down to them. Good luck to them. Let them go. Say goodbye. Shut the door. They'll come back if they want you. and they'll make that known to you. And I think for me, that's the biggest change that I've made. Probably in my late 30s, I got to that stage. And sometimes it's an event that can change, you know, how you change your relationship habits or how you handle things, because you go through it once and you reflect on it and go, I'm not doing that again. I'm not getting that low again, or I'm not going to waste that much time again. And I'm sure you've all done it out there if you're listening. I'm sure, like, you look back now over events that have happened and you think, I wasted far too many years worrying about something that I could never change. Like trying to work out where it went wrong and reading all the messages and mapping out who was where. If I could have only been at this place or I turned up there, you can drive yourself nuts with that. And we've all done it. And maybe that's part of the process of, working through the grief of splitting up with someone. But, in hindsight, when you look back, you know, it's a lot of wasted years, and you would always do it. No, I'm a big believer in that. If you went back into the situation again, you'd act exactly the same way because you'd have no prior knowledge. You only act differently once you've done it once, and I think that's what changes our behaviour in relationships. Is once you've been through it once, you learn that you wouldn't do that again. I hope you've loved the questions today, guys, and thank you for listening to 50 Shades and Grey. Make sure you subscribe, hit the subscribe and follow button because it helps push the channel all the time. And I really appreciate you listening and taking your time. Right. Take care, guys. See you next week. Bye bye.